interesting. Now, I also brought some of my books here, just to remind you folks. My last book that came out is called Post-Liberalism, The Death of a Dream. Quite frankly, I expected the dream to die a little quicker than it's been dying. You know, I really did not expect our president to be re-elected, but I still believe this is quite right because the liberals are pushing ideas that cannot work. Obviously, we are watching Obamacare explode before our eyes, okay? And in other words, these things are going to accumulate, and you know, things are going to change. I also have here another of my books called Human Hierarchies. In other words, liberals are fond of promoting what they call social justice. They believe that ultimately we will all become equal, and we should become equal. It is my thesis that we are in fact a hierarchical species, that we rank ourselves for very good reasons. I mean, we do not want to elect a president, for instance, by lot. We really want someone who knows what he's doing, all right? So we rank ourselves. It helps us. This is, as far as I know, the only book that explains this that's out there. Got a recommendation from the American Library Association, so yay team. All right. Now, one more thing that I'm engaged in, and that I'm going to be talking about today. Look, I was deeply, deeply disappointed by the results of the last election. I could not believe that the American people would re-elect a man who demonstrated what a megalomaniac, demagogue, liar he is. In other words, I hate liars. I mean, I despise liars. And the climate in our nation has just become poisonous. In the media, in government, almost everywhere. And it got to the point where I decided I needed to do something about it. In other words, after the election, I went into a funk for a few days, and then I decided, wait a minute now, I can't lie down and take this, and I started putting something in action. I have founded, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Morality Now, Incorporated. We have been putting up our website. You can go to the website. It's www.moralitynow.net. Okay, so it's there, and indeed, I'm hoping to go out and do a lot more talking about these issues. This project is dedicated to promoting values, to bringing values back, and to keeping it simple. 5 values that I think most Americans share, both on the left and the right. These values are honesty, responsibility, fairness, family, and liberty. Okay? I've run these past conservatives, I've run these past liberals. We all agree. We don't necessarily agree on the particulars, but the general idea people agree on. Now, I'm going to be wanting people to join me in this as we go along to promote the ideas, so I am open to input from anybody who's willing to give it, willing to participate in this project. Where it will go, I don't know. One of the things that I have been attempting to do is to put together workshops for the students at KSU that are related to this issue. These workshops, yes, I know. He's
working.
He's obviously not one of my fans. These 2 workshops are, one is called an identity workshop, which students are always trying to find out, who am I, what do I want to be in this world. It strikes me you can't be honest with other people if you don't first start being honest with yourself. The other workshop is an intimacy workshop. You know, marriage is under assault in the United States. The young people know the divorce statistics as well as anybody. They live with them. But nobody tells them how to do anything about it. so we're going to be working on that. Those are two of the projects. Now, I've had people contact me about what I mean by the 5 values. And so basically this is what I want to concentrate on today in terms of what am I talking about. I'm also writing a book about this. I'm always writing books. It's just what I do, okay? To clarify this thing. Let me start with honesty, because in many ways this is simple. By honesty, I mean 2 things. Telling the truth and keeping promises. We have become so cynical in our society. I mean, certainly my students tell me over and over again that, you know, how can you tell that a politician is lying? He's opened his mouth, okay? I mean, there is just this sense that you can't believe anything that anybody says. Well, you cannot have a mass society with over 315 million people if we lie to one another. We depend upon strangers. We have to trust people, and trusting them starts with trusting what they say. Now, we tend to be more honest with one another in private, but in public it has gotten absolutely and completely outrageous, especially from the liberal side of the agenda. In other words, where, gee, the question is, does a particular way of phrasing things work? Not, is it true? In other words, they'll market test the idea of balance, and then they'll use the word balance over and over again in ways that have nothing to do with its original meaning. You know, another example from Obama is transparency. You know, going to be open and honest, and you're going to see how we make decisions. And I hope you folks know this has been among the least transparent administration. They find all kinds of ways to cover up and disguise and confuse and mislead. You can't have this and have people work together and be able to trust one another. By honesty, I also mean to include keeping one's promises. You tell someone you are going to do something, you must at least make a good faith effort to do it. Yeah, we can't always keep our promises, but we sure as heck can try. Right now we have an administration that lives by promises, hundreds of promises, multiple promises in every speech that are words, mere words. No efforts are made to implement them whatsoever, and he gets away with it. And people don't hold his feet to the fire. It's, yeah, well, here we go again, you know, and by golly, and oh, by the way, and forgive me if I'm insulting some people in this room here, I was very upset with the performance of evangelicals during the last election. Mind you, my wife is raised an evangelical, so I've got nothing against evangelicals per se in terms of religion. But I was very upset with the primary results in South Carolina, where Newt Gingrich was revealed to be utterly immoral in his family transactions, and he won overwhelmingly anyway. And then, quite frankly, the reason Romney did not win is that the evangelicals stayed home. If they had come out in the same numbers they had in the previous election, we would not have our current president. And so, you know, it strikes me that we have got to, when it comes to values, not depend upon religion. Excuse me, let me put this in another way. I am not against religion, and I am absolutely not against people holding moral principles because of their religion. This is absolutely fundamental to our country and to just human life. This is who we are as a species. What I am saying is we cannot depend upon religion exclusively. We have to have secular buy-in to these moral principles as well, okay? And I think that folks who would never vote for somebody because they were an evangelical might very well vote for somebody because they agreed with their moral principles. So I am saying that if conservatives, but for that matter liberals too, want to start winning elections start subscribing to these moral principles. Start pushing for honesty in both the sense of truth and in the sense of keeping promises. In other words, one of the things that I noticed about the last election is young people voted for Obama, women voted for Obama. They voted for Obama because they thought that he was more idealistic than Romney. Romney was too pragmatic. He was simply going to get the economy going again. There are a lot of people in our society who want to be inspired. In other words, you can't just say we need to defend our Constitution. We do need to defend our Constitution, but it's not sexy. You're not going to get votes from young people or women by doing that. What you've got to do is you've got to say, here are some principles, here are some things from which we all can benefit, and we must fight for these things. And I start out with honesty. Honesty, 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 because in my conversations with people across the political spectrum, everybody is disgusted with this. I mean, a lot of people voted for Obama, but the enthusiasm was not there this time around, because they too know that he was not the president of hope and change. Well, he did give us change, but it was not hope for change. So I'm saying, let's start with this one. This one is, to me, the bedrock of what a society needs to be. But then I go on to my other 5 principles. Second one, responsibility. Responsibility. Now that's much more vague than when we talk about honesty. So let me say what I mean by responsibility, okay? We live in a complicated society in which there is a division of labor. We do different jobs. We do different things. We have different responsibilities. I am a college professor. I have a responsibility to do my job. I am delegated to do something, so responsibility means doing your job well. In other words, being an expert in what you say, what you do, but also being personally motivated to do it right. Okay, this is not just an intellectual business here. You know, I'm an airline pilot. I jolly well better know how to fly the plane, and I jolly well better try to fly it as well as I can. That's what I mean by responsibility in terms of everybody. We all have different jobs. We have jobs, our occupations, but we have jobs within our families too. We have responsibilities towards our friends and colleagues in the world in general. So, do your job well. That's responsible. But another part for me is this. And if things go wrong, own up to it. Take the responsibility. Admit at least to yourself when you have screwed up. In the real world, there are times when you can't say, hey, it was me, it's all my fault, because people will dump on you. I mean, this is just reality, okay? But we have to at least be honest with ourselves about this kind of thing. If we don't admit our fault, then we are not going to fix what's broken. An awful lot of people keep on pretending that things are working when they're not. Like Obamacare, for heaven's sakes. It's a disaster in the making. Or the financial thing, the bailouts and other things. These are horrible things, and people don't admit them. My God, the housing bubble depended so much on loan practices initiated by the federal government. You never hear about that. You hear about predatory lenders. Hell, they were just trying to survive. Okay? If you don't, and so we haven't fixed it. I go back to when we had deinstitutionalization in mental hospitals, and turned out to be a disaster, where we see people killing people in schools and so forth nowadays, with people not even willing to admit that simply letting people out on the streets without some place to go was a bad idea. This is 30 years down the road, and people are still not owning up to their responsibilities. So I'm saying, no, if we are dependent upon one another, let's not just be honest, let us be responsible. Okay? So this is what I intend to push. The third one is fairness. And this is a little harder to explain because there really is a political divide among this one. You know, liberals and friends were talking about social justice and fairness and what have you. And for many folks, what they mean by fairness is equal. Well, a little while ago, I showed you my book on hierarchies. I do not believe in total equality. I believe it is absurd and never likely to happen. We are different. We have different abilities. We have different desires. We are not the same. We are not replaceable by other people automatically. But more than that, we rank ourselves relative to other people. We all want to be important and special and better than at least someone. I mean, this is a time of March Madness, for goodness sake. These teams are knocking themselves out to be the best. And a lot of us are rooting for them to be the best. I think the Florida Gulf Coast thing is just terrific. I also happen to root for Syracuse, so yay, Syracuse. They've moved ahead. Okay? Some of you may have heard this, but I tell my classes this because it's the simplest way I know to convey what's involved. I tell them there is something you will never hear if you don't go to a Braves baseball game. You will never hear a group of Braves fans standing up and chanting in unison, "We're number 6. We're number 6. I'll take bets on this with anybody who's with me. Okay? It ain't gonna happen. We all want to be number 1. We sure as heck do not want to be at the bottom. We want to be better than somebody. And by the way, this is one of the reasons we work hard at things. We benefit from the hard work that people do because they want to be successful. I don't think successful is a bad word. So I don't want an equal world. And that's not what I mean by fairness. What I mean by fairness primarily is same rules for everybody. No cheating, no putting your finger on the scale. In other words, let other people, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're white, black, male, female, tall, short, I don't care what. Same rules for everybody. Now, in the real world, it's true, it's not completely equal. We talk about equality of opportunity, and it's not 100% equal in this respect. Let's face it, if you're born with rich parents, you've got an advantage. If you're born to poor parents, you've got a disadvantage. This is a reality that we cannot fix. We can make some changes. We can open schools up to allow people to move ahead. Let me talk about myself. When I came to the school, one of my colleagues told me that she thought that I came from an upper class family. Not at all. I was raised in a 2.5-room apartment over a grocery store. I put myself through college. Didn't receive a dime from anybody except some student loans. Mostly did it through working. And here I am. Well, I'm not at Harvard, but hey, KSU is the Harvard of the Pines, so we're okay. In other words, we need opportunity, but fairness doesn't demand that it be absolute. And lots of times when you try to make things absolute, you get into trouble. Thomas Sowell calls this cosmic justice, where everything is absolutely perfect. And in this world, it's just not absolutely perfect. Okay, Plato, this goes back 2,300 years or so. Plato wanted to make everything equal by taking children away from their parents and raising them by nurses. Well, during the 17th and 18th centuries, that was done in the foundling hospitals. They took babies that were put out by their parents and raised them in what were the origins of orphanages. And what happened was 85% of the babies died. Because babies need love. And strangers don't give babies the love that they need. Well, if parents are going to give them the love, Some parents have more to give besides the love, and you can't erase that. You've got to live with that. Nonetheless, we can make opportunities available. We certainly can strive to give people equality before the law. When these things are flagrantly violated, we can stand up, we can make adjustments to try to get us closer, with the understanding that closer does not mean perfect. The other thing I mean by fairness is this. You should get what you earn. We don't give you freebies. We don't give you admission to a college because of the color of your skin. We give you the admission according to the same rules for everybody, which means you got the grades, you earn it, you get in. It also means the free market economy. You start a company, you make it work, you get the proceeds. You don't have the government decide to confiscate them. Okay? Yes, we can have various inequalities in taxation and whatnot, but within limits. I mean, 75, 80, 90% taxation, that's ridiculous. Okay? So that's what I mean by fairness. This is a kind of thing where you're never going to get complete agreement about exactly what's fair, but this is part of what a democratic society is about. Working these things out, having discussions about how we modify things and so forth. Okay? So I've given you three. Honesty, responsibility, fairness. The third one is family. Family is under assault. I actually teach marriage and family at KSU, and I may even do a MOOC. This is one of these massive open online courses on this down the road. Because we know that family is in trouble. Some folks on the left think that this is perfectly okay. They think that all families are created equal, no matter how they are constituted. They seem to think, especially when we look at this push for gay marriage, that the primary mission of marriage is to make the partners happy. It is not. The primary mission of families is to raise children and raise them well. We know, in sociology, we know this for a fact. Children who are raised in stable two-parent households do far better than children raised in unstable households, whether we're talking about single parents or divorced parents and so forth. No question about it. Now my attitude, and some of you may disagree with me, if you want to go out and have sex, go for it. Do what you will. You know, protect yourself against disease, you know, and by all means protect yourself against creating an unwanted child. But if you simply want to have sex, I don't think you need to worry about being married. Enjoy yourself. Mind you, and again, this is, I think there's ample data of this, if you are promiscuous, one of the things that you will be missing is love. If you are sleeping around, you're not going to develop the relationships that you need for genuine love. You will simply have sex. But like I say, if it's protected, I don't really care. What I care about is, if you're bringing children into this world, you have a responsibility to them. And that starts with a commitment to the partner with whom you create that child, and continues with the commitment to that child. Marriage is something that people must work at. It doesn't happen automatically. Now, there was a time in the past when people got married because they needed to. I tell the story of somebody, you may have heard of it, no doubt you have, Davy Crockett. I remember Davy Crockett from the Walt Disney saga in the 1950s, where he married this young woman and they had some children and it was a happy little family, and then he went off to war. Now he did marry his sweetheart, and they did have apparently a happy marriage, and he did go off to war, and just as Disney depicted, his wife died. And he was left with, I think, 2 small children. Now, in the Disney saga, that's the end of it. He goes off and fights some more wars and so on, and you never hear the rest of the story. The rest of the story is, within weeks, Crockett remarried. Who did he marry? He married a widow who had 3 children of her own. It wasn't the same kind of love match that the first marriage was, but these were 2 people who needed one another. He needed a woman to raise his children and to take care of the home. She needed somebody to go out and do the farming and the hunting and so on. And they got married and stayed married, and it was apparently a mutually supportive arrangement, but they did it back then because you had to do it and everyone understood it. Nowadays, not true. Nowadays, whether you're male or female, you can get a job in which you can earn enough money to take care of yourself, to get an apartment, to buy food, to go out, if you can't cook, to go to a restaurant, to both buy frozen food or whatever. So you don't have to. Nowadays, if you get married, it's because you choose to get married. If you stay married, it's because you know how to stay married. You know how to engage in an intimate relationship. Intimacy is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. When you are living close by another human being, they get to know your weaknesses. Not just that, they're close enough to push your buttons. Really? I mean, intimate couples can make their lives really a hell on earth. You want to make it work, you better not do that. You better know how to work together. And there are all kinds of things that people do not seem to understand. One of the things, for example, that I talk about is, if you're going to have a good relationship with somebody, you need to develop a division of labor. It's got to be a case where, I don't think you hear this much, in the public discussion, but you've got to have it so that each partner specializes in different things. Now, mind you, my grandparents had a traditional specialization. My grandmother did all of the cooking, okay? And my grandfather, he did all of the fixing up around the house. When my grandmother was cooking and my grandfather came home from a hard day's work, he'd go into the kitchen because it smelled good, and he'd go to try to sample something, and when my grandmother caught him, she'd get one of her wooden spoons and she'd chase him out. Now, my grandmother was all of 4'8". She couldn't have done anything, but he ran. The kitchen was hers. Meanwhile, he had a shop out in the back, and when she wanted to visit him in the shop, she would tiptoe in and she would look around the corner, sigh, is it okay? She would not come in without his permission. That was his domain. Traditional kind of division of labor. Well, now, with most women working with families smaller than they were, things are changing, and couples are creating their own division of labor. My wife and I, to just give a very simple example, when we got married,